I just want to say I was very pleased and honoured today to be able to welcome my friend Magnus Brunner, Commissioner for Internal Affairs and for Migration from the European Commission to Ireland today. We had a very good meeting this morning that discussed a whole range of issues. I suppose from the perspective of the Irish government, we're particularly concerned about ensuring that we're prepared for the Irish presidency, which is going to commence on the 1st of July next year. And it was very worthwhile for me as Minister for Justice, Home Affairs and Migration to have engagement with you, Magnus, in respect to the issues that the Commission seeks to prioritise during that period, and indeed the issues that Ireland will also seek to prioritise. We also had a very effective presentation from the Criminal Assets Bureau. When I've been out at meetings of Justice and Home Affairs ministers out in the European Union, many of them ask questions about Ireland's Criminal Assets Bureau, which has really been extremely effective in seizing assets of criminal activity from criminals. And I know it's a scheme that many of my colleagues in the European Union wish to see adopted in their own countries and emulated. And I thought it would be very helpful if Magnus was given an overview of that by officers from the Criminal Assets Bureau. Finally, then, we went out to Citywest for the purpose of just assessing how Pact implementation is going. As you know, Citywest is where we're processing applications under the Pact, and in terms of the new legislation that I'm bringing forward and that will hopefully be enacted by June next year, that's where we're going to see the new systems operating under that legislation operating effectively. And I must say I was very pleased with the presentation that both of us were giving there. I had the presentation previously, but I think it does show that Ireland is ready for the new laws that are going to come in once we get them enacted through the Oireachtas.
And the big migration reform, the European migration reform we started a year ago, is key, and it's all about implementing this Pact on Asylum and Migration now. There were some missing pieces also from the Pact. That's the return regulation, safe country of origin, just to mention a few, and we are working very hard and very closely together to get this reform through. It's the biggest migration reform we had, and we need it, of course. We need this reform. Restore trust, that's important, and to show the people that we have control over what is happening in the European Union, that we decide who comes to the European Union and not the smugglers and the human traffickers.
Paul, Sinn Féin had suggested we shouldn't have gone into the Migration Pact. Had we not gone into the Migration Pact, we would still be facing the same issues that have been dealt with arising from the fact that there are very many people coming from the United Kingdom through the border in Northern Ireland down here. So those issues wouldn't have gone away simply because we decided not to go into the Migration Pact. We have designated the UK as a safe third country. Issues arise from that legally. But the most important thing I have to say in terms of my engagement with the UK government is that there's cooperation and collaboration between the two of us. That is ongoing and will continue. And Gavin, just in terms of the processing of international protection applications, the most important thing in my assessment is speed, that people get an answer in respect to their application promptly. That's why we have increased resources within the IPO so considerably. That's why the resources are out in Citywest at present. And people are getting decisions on the basis of the pilot project we're running within a period of 3 months. And that's what we want to see, first instance decisions and indeed appeals. In terms of what was announced in the UK last week, obviously we have to try to get our own numbers down in terms of applications for international protection. And I'm pleased when you look at last year, there was 18,500 applications. This year, I'd say we'd be somewhere around 13,000, maybe a bit less. I'll need to keep a very close eye on what are the consequences of the decisions made in the UK. I'm conscious no law has been changed yet in the UK, although there has been announcements. But if the announcements lead to changes in migratory flows, well, that's something I'm going to have to consider and discuss with my government colleagues.
Tag.
Like from the Irish Examiner. Minister, just to follow up on that, obviously one of the measures that's been announced by the UK government is the time limiting of asylum applications. They might, I think it's 2.5 years they get initially, and then they can apply for indefinite leave to remain. Is that something that you and the government will consider introducing to match the UK?
Well, in terms of what the UK have done, I'm going to assess, first of all, to see what are the consequences of it. Obviously, in terms of reassessing applications, that's going to result in there being more administrative demands on the system.
Have the feeling that the UK wants to get more and more engaged with the European Union, which is a good sign, of course, and only together we can get over these challenges.
Adam Higgins from The Sun. Commissioner, do you envisage when the Pact is fully implemented that less people will be coming to Ireland or to Europe to seek international protection? And if they don't come to Europe, where will they go? And Minister, on a separate issue, are you concerned that Gerard Hutch might win the Dublin Central by-election? And does an election run have any impact on the current case with CAB?
With the new rules from the Pact and the additional rules, returns and other legislative proposals, it's a complete shift, I would say. And we will have new rules such as screening of illegal arrivals, having the border procedure at the external borders. So yes, the answer is a clear yes. There will be less people, of course, coming on an illegal basis, and that's exactly what we want to address with this new legislation. Registration in the EU database, for instance, is another good example. Mandatory border procedures at the external border. So a lot of different topics within this pact, and once we've implemented it, yes, the numbers should definitely go down, but it's only one side of the coin, of course. That's the European house we have to bring in order. But then we also have to engage with third countries. That's what we do already, safe third countries, safe countries of origin. We're working on that. But getting engaged and putting migration on the table when it comes to agreements with third countries, I think is important. I usually call it migration diplomacy, which we desperately need.
Yeah, just in respect of your question to me, I don't know who's going to win the Dublin Central by-election. Obviously, any candidate who wants to run has to comply with the provisions set out in the Electoral Act as to who can and can't be a candidate. But in terms of other issues, like issues have to be resolved. If you have been served with a summons by CAB and if you have a tax bill that has to be met, that has to be met. I don't want to get into the specifics of an individual, but if you look, the Electoral Act is clear. It doesn't preclude somebody in his position from running as a candidate. However, there may be consequences afterwards.
Two final questions.
Brian Martin from the Irish Daily Mail. Minister, there was reporting in, I think, the Sunday Times 2 weeks ago. It said, separately as understood, the government is examining curtailing student visas. This would apply to student visas for those in English language schools. I just wondering if you could maybe expand on whether there are plans either Cabinet this week or in the future to reduce the number of people who are coming here to study English as a foreign language, which is obviously quite a significant kind of economy in Ireland. And then separately, but relatedly, you're bringing forward a lot of measures this week and presumably into the future. Do you have a figure, or does the department have a figure in terms of how much you're going to reduce migration by, and not just in terms of international protection?
Okay.
Is there a percentage figure or 2,000 or 3,000?
In terms of English language schools, I'm not bringing forward any proposals this week or in the immediate future. I did have a discussion with my colleague James Lawless, the Minister for Further Education. Obviously, in terms of we're trying to reduce immigration or slow down the population growth, one area where we can control is where we provide visas for people to come in. International protection, I suppose, is a percentage, probably a small percentage of the number of people who come into the country. I think we hand out approximately 60,000 or so student permissions each year. So it is an area that we are looking at, particularly in respect of English language schools, but no decisions have been made yet. But there's ongoing engagement between myself and Minister Lawless and indeed across government. In terms of trying to bring down the numbers of people coming into Ireland, I suppose the example I gave you is an example where our own decisions can result in the numbers coming down. One, I suppose, of the elements of international protection that it's hard to control is that you don't know each year what are the numbers going to be. As I said, last year 18,500 people applied. We're looking at probably just less than 13,000 this year. But certainly in terms of the measures that are being introduced, I think they will have an impact in reducing the numbers of people coming in seeking international protection. As I said before, whether it's at first instance or at appeal, the majority of people who apply for international protection don't get it. And I think it's important that people are aware that if they do apply and they're not entitled to it, that there'll be consequences. And I think the efficiencies that are going to be brought in by the new legislation, I think they'll communicate that fairly broadly to people, that they will know there's no point in applying for international protection if they're not entitled to it in Ireland.